Welcome back to the Agriland Pavilion here at the Ploughing Championships in Ratheniska in County Laois. We're continuing our theme today of sustainability, environment and climate, and I'm joined live on the stage now by Barry Caslin, an energy specialist with Teagasc, and of course Pat Smith from Local Power and chair of the MREF. Thank you for joining us today, gentlemen.
Pleasure.
First, Barry, I might go to you. Obviously we're talking about renewable energy. It's something that's very topical at the moment because we are in what some are calling an energy crisis, and at times like this, what do you do when energy prices become too expensive, or the traditional means of getting electricity or energy become more delicate? They look to alternative sources. So in your discussions with farmers, what are you advising them currently?
Yeah, thanks very much for the invite to be here. Well, I suppose the first thing that I'll say is there's nothing new about renewables. They've been around for a long time. They've been used in several countries right across the world, and the technologies for the various types of renewables are improving. And there's farmers who are looking at AD biogas in countries like Germany and all over Europe, Denmark, where they're producing their own renewable gas. So they're producing gas. At the moment, Denmark, for example, 20% of their gas is coming from renewable gas, from biogas. They hope to be at 100% biogas, renewable gas by 2035. So you're seeing different kind of levels of progression in different countries right across Europe for the different types of renewables. And of course that's all down to policy in the various countries, what's driving it. So unless policy is initiating all of this, you won't see the development of renewables. Renewables is going to need lots of land. So that's where you're going to see farmers dedicating some of their land to the likes of wind turbines, solar PV panels for the larger scale projects, and also the biomass. So it could be forestry, pulpwood from forestry, or it could be purpose-grown energy crops that could be used for generating renewable heat. So they're the main types of renewables that farmers are looking at the moment. In more recent times, I suppose, the drive, the increase in the price of electricity has really got a lot of farmers talking about, especially areas like solar PV, and that particular technology has really caught on over the last 3 or 4 years in Ireland, where people are realising they can insulate against higher electricity prices by generating their own electricity on site. There are supports available for the likes of solar PV through the likes of the TAMS, the Targeted Agricultural Modernisation Scheme. So I think the farmers who's most relevant to are the ones that use the most electricity. So the ones that are using the most electricity will be the likes of pig farmers, poultry farmers, our dairy farmers, and of course the horticultural industry. Our beef farmers wouldn't be using that much. They'd use more electricity in their own domestic dwelling houses than they would on the farm. But in some cases, the farm and the sheds and the house are on the same meter, and it can make sense for them to be looking at solar PV to cover the whole lot, because it might be a sizable electricity load between the farm and the house when you put it all together, particularly at some times of the year. The technology has improved a lot in terms of its efficiency over the last number of years, and I think now is the time, with electricity prices in some cases going north of 40 cents, in some cases going north of 50 cents by some providers, that farmers should be looking at this as an option for generating their own energy.
And I might talk to you then about solar, Pat. Obviously something that Barry has mentioned there, trying to encourage this into various different farm enterprises. What's the uptake like from agriculture in terms of solar?
Certainly, I think agriculture is going to see a mass increase in solar PV in the coming years. It's going to be driven in the first instance by the economics of it, and then obviously the fact that the farming community in particular want to be as sustainable as possible. We know that the government is looking at providing specific grants for the farming community for solar PV, and those grants need to be generous so that the paybacks are below 5 years. They need to get rid of the restrictions in TAMS so that the system is sized correctly and to meet the farmers' needs and to comply with ESB networks. And for example, like what Barry said on a dry stock farm, I don't see why farmers shouldn't get a grant for their home as well, for the energy used in their home as well as the farm. Because some of that energy in the home is to provide for offices or whatever else. So I think the challenge for the government has to be now to come forward with a scheme that's easily accessible, that makes sense to farmers, that removes all the restrictions, and that supports not alone the solar PV but also supports battery storage, so that the farming community can store surplus energy during the day, discharge it in the evening at milking time or during the nighttime hours, and then potentially recharge on cheaper energy at night. There is an energy crisis, as we all know, and if the government are supporting enough of this, there's 100,000 farmers out there that very quickly could adopt the technology and certainly help the country deal with the crisis.
In terms of installing solar, Barry, I mean, are there questions that farmers need to be asking?
Yeah, well, certainly I'd be saying, there's a lot of the companies that are there have not been there that long, and I would, you really have to look at the credentials of the company that's supplying you with the technology. What work have they done in this area? I think that's very, very important, that you can see what have they done in this area, especially within the agricultural sector, because you have many of them working in the domestic sector, many of them have only been working in this area maybe 1 or 2 years and mightn't have that much experience. So you'd be looking for that as a key point of their previous work in this area. Where they're getting the technology from, what country it's coming from, is it European based, is it Asian based? Has that technology been used within agricultural systems before? How robust is that technology? There's glass on glass and the aluminium, the foil in between, the laminate in between, and that's very, very important in the case of where you have ammonia emissions in the likes of maybe pig units or poultry units, that you look at the robustness of that technology, that it won't degrade or corrode over a couple of years. You're also looking at the product warranty and the performance warranty of it as well, to make sure that that you have over 20 years product warranty, and also the performance warranty. Like, we know they degrade in terms of their output year on year, and it may be anywhere between 0.5% and 1% degradation in terms of the kilowatt hours of electricity that 1 kilowatt of solar PV will produce in a year. So it will reduce year on year, and you have to factor that into your when you're looking at this over maybe 15, 20 years and you're looking at your paybacks, you have to factor that into it as well.
Pat, we previously spoke, you and I, about the level of support that's there for renewable energy, and the grants that are available, what's included, what's not included, whether farmers can export back to the grid. Since I last spoke to you, do you see any light on the horizon in terms of the support that's coming from the government?
I think that they are starting to get their act together. However, the Department of Agriculture, I think, are going to come forward with a very good scheme, hopefully for the farming community. But the Department of Energy and Eamon Ryan's department, their policy is to get rid of grants for commercial solar. And I think it's regressive at a time when there's so many businesses under immense pressure, and a lot of businesses supporting the agricultural sector, where one client of mine, his energy bill has gone from 40 grand to 130 grand a month. Now, how are people and businesses like that going to survive? So the government have to come forward with very strong supports, but there's none better than empowering people to help themselves. And a good grant, easily accessible, I think, will be is the first thing, and then obviously access to the grid. And I think Barry hit a very pertinent thing in the context of farmer doing his research. The technology, farmers should look at the installation of a solar PV system like building a building fabric rather than as a machine. And there's warranties out there that can guarantee generation of 90% after 30 years, and they're European warranties. And a European warranty generally covers parts, labour and transport. An Asian warranty covers parts only. So I think the farming community is very good at doing their research, and I think they should take on board Barry's advice in regards to the technology.
Go ahead, Barry.
An important point there as well is the whole planning area is what they should be looking at as well, because in a lot of cases a dairy farmer will need in excess of 11 kilowatts of solar PV, and they're into planning territory at the moment when they're over about 9 kilowatts. So it's not really enough. So we've been hearing for quite some time that the planning laws are going to be amended, and that they will be freeing it up for projects that are under 50 kilowatts to meet the requirements of the microgeneration support scheme. So hopefully that does change soon, because many farmers will have to go for planning if they're actually putting it in today, if they're doing projects over 9 kilowatts. So it's just something to be aware of before you face into a project.
I would say on that, and I was talking to the Department of Planning last week. In fact, I phone them nearly every week because we're 4 years trying to get these planning exclusions.
Very frustrating.
And I took a view after Christmas last year. Every week I get in touch with them. And as of last week, they tell me that the legislation will be brought before the Dáil in the next 2 weeks and will be passed, and once that happens, hopefully the planning exclusions will be in place. It is incredible that something as basic as providing planning exclusions for solar PV has taken 4 years. There's something wrong.
That is true. I mean, we've put in, regular queries to see when this planning legislation relating to the exclusions is going to come forward. And it seems at a time when we are in an energy crisis and energy has never been more topical and to the fore, and trying to find alternative solutions, not just that are economical but environmentally friendly, that it's not being progressed faster.
And what you find in some cases that people are undersizing the panels that they actually really require. Instead of putting in their 14 or 15 kilowatts, they're downsizing to 9 kilowatts to comply with planning. So
I see what you mean. And Pat, you have a solar power company. Is it worth the while, without a sales pitch, but is it worth the while of a farmer, maybe a farmer in his 50s, a farmer in his 60s, to go putting in solar now when you're kind of looking more at a long-term return on it?
Yeah, it's well, definitely a euro saved is as good as a euro earned. With energy prices today, the payback, even without a grant, is starting to become more attractive. And with a grant, I think it will become very attractive, and the paybacks hopefully will be in the 3 to 4 year payback period. But just to, on a light-hearted note, I put solar in for an oldish guy about 4 years ago in Longford. And he had done his research and he picked my company because of the quality of panels that we use. And he wanted 5 kilowatts on a relatively small house. And I says, Joe, 3 kilowatts is probably enough. But anyway, he ended up getting 5. And I asked him, what at your age are you bothered about solar PV and the likes? And he says he's closer to the gates of St. Peter than I was, and he reckons there's a sustainability box to be ticked up there. So
he might be right. He might be right. We're all trying to be more sustainable now.
And that's the reality of it. That everyone talks about climate change, but we all have a role, and there's a big cost to making that change. And if every one of us put our shoulder to the wheel and do a bit, then the journey for everyone will be a lot lighter.
When you were also talking about the area of solar, I think it's an important point to make as well. I don't think we've made it up to this point, is that accelerated capital allowances or tax breaks are available for farmers that do invest in this area. That's very, very important that those tax benefits are there. Who knows how long they will be there, but certainly it's something that dairy farmers, pig farmers, poultry farmers can avail of at the moment. And along with that, the VAT component can be written off as well. They don't have to pay the VAT component. That can be done through a VAT 58 form, and they can claim it back at the end of the tax year. So there are two benefits that people need to be aware of also.
So Barry, finally, I might just say to you, what is the advice now for a farmer considering solar, or maybe not even at the first step of considering solar, who doesn't know too much about it, but what would you advise them to do right now, particularly given that you've mentioned there about what might be just timely grants or sort of benefits they can get at the moment?
This is the most important thing that any farmer does, especially as they're high energy users, is to look at their current energy use and monitor their energy use and see how much electricity they're using. Many farmers don't do that, but most of them are becoming more aware of it now that they should be doing it. So I'd say it's just looking at their electricity bills, looking at their bi-monthly bills, seeing what they're paying on an annual basis, knowing what are the key months, and then maybe speaking to an energy specialist. It could be through their local one-stop shop, and just trying to decide how many kilowatts of solar PV do they need. There may be other options that may come in the future for those farmers as well, in terms of maybe supplying grass for anaerobic digesters. I think you are going to see lots of opportunities. We're only at the start of this now. We're going to see a rapid transition in the way we produce and use energy all over Europe, all over the world, and this is the start of this new renewable transition. So farmers just need to be aware of what's the technologies that suit them, but first of all they need to benchmark where they're at the moment in terms of their energy usage and move the project along from there.
Absolutely, and we'll leave it there for now. We could talk about renewable energy all day long, and I think as time goes on, more and more is going to come out. I can vouch for the monitoring of the current electricity usage, because just from a personal point of view, I got an energy monitor, and it is absolutely phenomenal how much it opens your eyes to things that you had no idea were costing the energy that they're costing, and it has made me more self-aware in reducing my energy usage as well, not just for the economical side of it, but for the environmental as well. So that's definitely a very good first step. But gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us on the live stage here at the Agriland Pavilion today. Pat Smith, the chair of the MREF from Local Power, and of course Barry Caslin, energy specialist with Teagasc. So we'll head now back out to the ploughing site, where the Agriland team are out and about carrying out some more interviews.